Okay, good morning, everybody. This is the Principal's Coffee. I am Sean Higgins, the principal, and this is Friday, November 22nd. Okay, nobody's coming in yet. So we've got a few items that are just we'll go through them fast, and then there'll be kind of one big item, and then any questions that you have. And there's coffee and donuts, so please help yourself if you haven't yet. Um, so thank you for coming. Hopefully you're staying dry. Yesterday was our international feast. It was a huge success. Thank you to those people who were there helping out or giving food. It was the first time I've ever done it here, obviously. I have done things like this before, but I would say this was way more impressive than whatever I've experienced before. So Lexi, our teacher, Ms. Lonegrath, and Sarah Duffy, who's a board member, but also a parent, they did an amazing job of organizing it. It was so smooth and wonderful, and it was great to see everybody dressed up, or a lot of the kids dressed up. So thank you. It was great. I can't wait for next year. And there's a photo album that I sent out yesterday in the newsletter. So if you took photos, even if you just have a couple, you can email them to me. I'll put them in there. Or if you have a whole bunch, then send me an email and I'll give you the link and you can upload them yourself. Okay, don't forget today is minimum day. Everybody is leaving. Like the kids are leaving at 1:10. A lot of the staff is leaving at 1:10. Most of the rest of the staff is leaving by like 1:25, 1:30. So please don't forget because we don't want to hang out. We want to go too. And then of course next week is no school. Park and Rec is doing their thing for next week if you're signed up for that. And enjoy your week off and Thanksgiving. Hopefully you have some time off. Inclusive Schools Week. So, actually, let me just show you this. So the volunteers, they're like, oh, take a picture of us. So this is a picture of them. I included it in the Wednesday or the weekly newsletter. So it's a good picture. So thank you for volunteering again. Okay, so the week we get back, the first week of December, is Inclusive Schools Week. This is meaning inclusive of like all students, whether they're special ed or general ed. And I have to say, like this is something that I've always, before it even was a week, I've always been very passionate about inclusivity in my own classroom when I was a teacher or as a principal. And in my last school, we had, a lot of special ed. We had 4 special day classes, and a lot of RSP students, which are students that are in general ed, but get like extra support. And it was always the goal to become more and more inclusive, because you want kids to feel, you want the special ed kids to feel like they're included in everything that the gen ed kids are, but you also want the gen ed kids to feel like, we've got lots of similarities and we're not so different and everybody can coexist together, just like we do in the real world. And so when I came here, I was so pleasantly, happily surprised that this school really embraces inclusivity really, really well. Like the vast majority of our students in the K-5 Learning Center class are mainstream, that's what we call it. They're included in the gen ed class for most of the day. So for all of the subjects. And again, that's good for all kids. I see kids out on the playground mixing with, depending on, if they're special ed or gen ed, they're playing together. And I think that's a testament to the culture here at this school, because I've certainly been at schools where, the special ed kids play kind of separately than the gen ed kids. And, I know at my last school, like we worked, for many, many years, we worked on becoming more inclusive. And I think we did a really good job from where we were. But then like where this place is, where this school is, it's a lot farther than where I was, where we wanted to be at my previous school. So I'm very happy about that. Um, one, my last at my previous school, we had our speech therapist. Um, she was actually reverse mainstreamed. So when she was in school, at least for part of her high schooling, she was in special day classes as a gen ed student. Um, because again, like you're teaching the same standards to the kids, it's just how you give them access points. And so she was really like a really advocate for inclusivity, and I learned a huge amount from her. And so, we're already like, as I said, we're doing a really good job here, but we could always do better. And so we'll be recognizing that when we come back next week, and we'll just, continue to build and grow from that. And hopefully the students um, will become inclusive of everybody. Okay. Report cards are coming right after break. So they're due today. All the teachers most of the teachers have already finished them, but they'll be finished by the end of today. They are standards-based report cards. Those of you in first through fifth already know that. But basically, we've got all the standards that we teach, and we don't give letter grades like ABCs. We just give like, I think, 1, 2s, 3s. It's like, are you approaching, not met the standard, approaching the standard, or met the standard, something like that. I don't know what the language of this district, but that's basically what it is. And so it's for language arts and math, it breaks it down by standard, but then also the other subjects and like social emotional skills and PE and things like that. There's also scores that you could see on that. And so that will be coming home. And then there's a section for teacher comments. So you could read like specifically what's the teacher saying about your kid. So those are going home in the Thursday folder on Thursday, December 5th. And then the following week are conferences. And so your teachers will talk to you about the report card. If you have questions, like please bring them up at that time. And also our special ed students will be getting a progress report going home based on their IEP goals. And that also is going home in the December 5th Thursday folder. Okay, so, and then the following week, the week of December 9th, that's conference week. So I'm guessing all of your conferences are already scheduled. If they're not, they should be very soon. If you haven't scheduled them yet, I think the teachers have all reached out to you. So if you haven't responded yet, please do so, because we want to make sure that every parent and caregiver, we meet with everybody. So the teachers will go over report cards, kind of anything else that's happening in their class or with the student. But then you could also bring like whatever you want. You can be an active participant. Don't feel like, oh, I'll just go and listen to what the teacher says. And so one thing that I've done in my past, with my past school, and actually even when I was a teacher, is called Hopes and Dreams. And so I encourage you to think about this. What are your hopes and dreams for your students, for your children? And share that with the teachers at the conferences, because it's really insightful for the teacher to hear like, oh, whatever your hopes and dreams are for your student, it can help them kind of understand where you're coming from, where the student, how they could help the student. And then you could have a discussion like, okay, these are my hopes and dreams for my student. Like, this is what I'm going to do to help them. Tell the teacher that, like, teacher, what can you do to help them achieve these hopes and dreams? And then also, of course, the student. So have that conversation with your child. Like, these are my hopes and dreams for you. And, that not necessarily at the conference, but you could have that next week or something, or even after the conference. What are you going to do to achieve these hopes and dreams? And so there's really, it's not just the teacher's responsibility or your responsibility. It's like all three really need to work together to make sure. And so bring that, you don't have to feel like, oh, I'll just listen and do what the teacher says, you can be active in this conference. So I encourage that. Any questions so far? I feel like I'm rushing. I don't know why. Okay. Okay, so then this is the I sent out a few surveys, like what do you want to talk about at these conferences? So I have a bunch of things to talk about, and every principal's coffee, I kind of bring up one of them. So this time I'm bringing up behavior management, like student management of like when kids are misbehaving. And so and if you want to, I have other things that I'll talk about at future principals' coffees. But if you, and at the end, well, I sent it. No, I didn't send it out. Well, I have a QR code if you want to scan it. I'll bring it around, or you could come up to my computer and scan it. And you can enter like, oh, talk about this. So behavior management. So we have a spreadsheet of anytime a kid gets in like major trouble, like basically when I get involved. We keep a spreadsheet since the beginning of the year, so we can keep track of like what's happening. And also we keep track of like minor incidences that I might not be directly involved with, but I'm aware of it, so we kind of keep track of that too. Teachers keep track of their own stuff of like if it's happening in the classroom, but I'm not really told about it, like, you know, that kind of stuff happens and they keep track of that. That's not what this is about though. This is like, you know, the major things. So everybody, all staff have access to this spreadsheet that they could see. And so there's like multiple tabs on the spreadsheet. One of them is like, this is what happened. And then like this, there's another tab that's like, this is like the consequence. And then there's another tab of like, you know, these are the minor things that I'm not really directly involved in, but be aware of them. And then there's like a tab for Park and Rec. So sometimes Park and Rec has issues after school. And so then we could know, like usually Angela, the director, we text each other or call each other or talk to each other if there's major issues. But then we also have this spreadsheet. So we're like, oh yeah, what happened a month ago? Oh yeah, it's right there at Park and Rec. Happened in September and now it's coming up again. And so then she could also see what's going on here in our school during the day. And so then it's, you know, the consistency, kids can't get away with stuff because we're all aware. And then also like whenever there's like a big issue and there's a consequence, like let's say kids are, you know, being rough out here on the Park and Rec yard during lunch. And you know, they can't, like their consequences, they can't play on the Park and Rec yard for the next day or so. So I send out an email to the whole staff saying, okay, you know, this person can't play here tomorrow at lunch. And then if they want to know more details, they could go into the spreadsheet and read why. And so all of our yard duty staff check that every day. The teachers check it if it's their kid. And then also we have a Monday memo for staff, which is like the weekly newsletter for all of you, except it's just for the staff. So in the Monday memo, there's like a section that's like, you know, yard issues. And so if there's ever any kind of misbehaviors and we need to keep track of like, oh, you know, watch these kids or don't let, you know, this game is canceled for a couple of days or whatever, like that's always there. It kind of updated weekly. So I've made a bunch of graphs. I know you can't really see this, so I'll kind of explain it. So this is the 3 months that we've been in school so far. So September, October, and November, like how many major behavior incidences have we had that I've been involved in? So you can see September there were a lot. There were like, you know, 24 or so incidences. And then it dropped off to 10 in October. And we've got like 6 this month. So this is, I've never seen anything like this before. Like this looks good. Like, oh, kids are learning. This looks really good. But in my whole 25 years career, September's always shorter because kids are still in that honeymoon phase. They're kind of getting to know, like, what are the teachers and the staff going to do? And then in October, there's always a spike, always, every single year. There's always a spike in October, and then it declines from November to like February, and then March and April, spring fever, it starts going back up. So I've never seen this before. So I don't even know how to explain it. Like maybe it's because I was new and like kids are thinking, oh, I could like things are different. I can get away with things. Or maybe I don't know why. I really don't know. I've talked to the teachers about it. Maybe that's just the way Brisbane is. Maybe, you know, that's just a culture. I've worked in lots of places. I've never seen this, but it's interesting. So we'll keep track and we'll kind of adjust and see how things go. Yes.
One is, the first question is, can you give examples of like major categories?
I will do that. I'm going to do that. Yes. Yes.
It's all staff reported like observational. It's not anything that's coming from the children that is bubbling.
Sometimes it comes from the kids. Sometimes the kids come directly to a staff member or to me and they bring it to me, or sometimes the staff sees it and they bring it to me. Yeah. Okay, so these are the types of, this is when these major behaviors are happening. So you could see the green, like over 50%. This is lunchtime recess. That's, you know, very common. The yellow is morning recess. Again, common, you know, more free time to like play and do things that could get you in trouble. The red is the class time. You know, not that much. Teachers are, you know, our teachers have a really good classroom management, so that's not really an issue. And then the blue is before school. So, you know, like before 8:25 when they're out in the yard. Not much happening there either. And then these are the types of major behaviors. So the big orange one, which is like whatever, what is that? About 70%. This is physical aggression. This is not fighting. Kids aren't like punching each other. I'm not talking about fighting is different. We've not had a fight this whole year. This is things like, you know, kids are playing soccer and they're very competitive, and a kid like kicks another kid in the shin, and the kid like falls down and scrapes their knee and is crying. And or you know, kids are running around and playing tag, and like one kid like tags too hard and like pushes them to the ground. That's kind of the physical aggression that I'm talking about. The blue, which is also like 18%, this is abusive language. So this is like being mean, calling people names, just hurting their feelings verbally in some way. And then the others are defiance, disrespect, and disruption, which are all kind of minor things. And then these are the number of referrals and how many kids have been like repeat. So you could see like 30 kids were referred once, had one major behavior issue, and that was it. We dealt with them. There were no other issues. Then I think there were like maybe 6 or 7 kids that have had 2, and there were maybe 3 that have had 3. So again, not a huge, it's not like we're having like 1 or 2 kids that are like every single week. They're not, it's not, I would say this is good. You want to see like a lot of kids that are doing it once, not a lot of repeat offenders. The repeat offenders are the ones that are really hard to manage, and we don't really have that here in this school this year. So then what do we do when these things happen? So this school year, Assembly Bill 291 took effect. You've probably heard of it, or maybe you've heard of it. This is where in California, where we can no longer take away recess from kids as a consequence. And so I believe that happened at some point in the past, maybe last year or maybe a couple years ago. We knew about it last year, and so everybody was kind of planning for it last year. I don't know if it happened, I don't know when it stopped here. So we do things differently. But there's lots of things we do. So first, they always talk to me. They always have a conference with me. whether it's like just, out in the yard, kind of like away from other kids, or we go to my office, but I always have a conversation with them. And then we have our toolboxes, which are like 12 steps of like how to control your emotions. So like breathing, breathing tool, or use your, what's the one we're doing right now? The seeing tool, like where you see like somebody with like your eyes, but also your ears and your heart. And so you just see them with like empathy. And so we have all of these various tools that I always talk to kids about, like which ones could you have used? And then we have a reflection form. So that's something that, not every single time, but most of the time of these behaviors, the kids fill out a reflection form, or I help them if, they're little kids and they can't write yet, like kindergartners, then I'll talk to them and I'll fill it out for them. Oftentimes an apology is needed. So I'll have the kids write an apology letter or a card. And then I'll facilitate an apology between the two kids. There's sometimes a restorative conversation if they're just like really angry at each other and they can't, like an apology is not gonna fix things. Then our counselor, Josie, or myself, we will sit down with like the kids and just have a restorative conversation and kind of make a plan of like, okay, how are we going to coexist together? Or maybe we're not. Maybe we're going to take a break. Maybe we're not going to do this for a while. And then, but what happens in 3 weeks? Let's meet back in 3 weeks or 2 weeks, whatever, to kind of make a plan. And then we call home. Oftentimes, pretty much universally, when any of these major things happen, I'm always calling home. And then as I kind of alluded to before, like there's a restricted play. So, we will, stop the basketball game for a few days because they're just being too aggressive. Or, if a kid is playing up here in the park and rec and they get in trouble, then they can't play there anymore. Or if it's just with one specific kid that there's an issue with, like you can't play with that kid anymore for like a couple of days. So wherever that kid is, like that kid has, maybe they play in the park and rec and on the big field. So then that student can't play in those places. We don't take away the recess, we just restrict their play. So you can go on the big toys yard, but you can't go where the issues were kind of occurring. And that's kind of our behavior management for major behaviors. Any questions about that? Yes.
You peaked in September and went down, which is unusual for you. Did the teachers feel like that was normal for our school, or?
So our teacher, we do data analysis from time to time. And the last time I did this with the teachers was like the beginning of October. And so we hadn't seen, oh, I was going to talk about this. So we hadn't seen the dip yet. We just saw like, 24 or so, and then, October just started. But what the teachers did at that point, they're like, okay, they took a look, some of the teachers were like, oh, those are my kids that are, so now I'm going to now teach some social emotional lessons from our social emotional curriculum that we have, or other lessons that kind of address like what my kids' needs are. Other teachers were like, yeah, none of my kids have been on this, so I don't need to do anything. Or maybe I will be proactive and I'll, do these other lessons that could like, make sure that nothing continues to happen. And so, but they haven't seen, I've shared it with like our site council, a lot of this data, like in the end of October. So they did see the dip from September to October. But we haven't taken that staff-wide yet. So we will probably look at this, sometime probably, in the new year, like after winter break, and we'll kind of make decisions and figure out what to do. I do plan to just share these slides with the teachers and the staff because I think it's interesting. And I mean, they have access to these slides these, all these graphs were made from the spreadsheet that they have, but it's just like nice visual to see the graphs as opposed to like reading a spreadsheet. Nobody wants to do that, nobody wants to analyze that. unless like that's, the moment that we're doing it in a staff meeting. So yeah, we'll probably do that throughout the year. Does that answer your question? Okay, other questions about that? Yes,
So there seems to be a distinction between the major and the minor incidents, right? Major
Yes.
incidents get logged on the
yes,
spreadsheet, and then if we get a phone call from you, we're kind of assuming that that's a major incident.
yes,
Okay.
yeah. And teachers, they kind of manage their own, they might still call you over a minor incident, but that's kind of up to the teacher. Like I was the type of teacher, every teacher is kind of, different. I was the type of teacher where I had a really tight ship and I had never sent, I could probably count on one hand in the 13 years that I taught that I sent kids to the principal's office for major behavior. I just didn't have that in my classroom. And I would say for the most part, like teachers are really good about managing minor behaviors or any, student behaviors. And so, I don't think there's a need for phone calls home, but I know some teachers just do that because they just like having conversations with parents about kids just to preempt anything. But it's not really required by teachers to call for minor behaviors. Other questions? Okay, well, right on time, 9:00. So if you have, so I'm going to end the Zoom. Thank you for coming, people watching this.